It is a niche. And knowing the student loan payment and the debt strategies, most wealth managers and financial advisors and stuff don't have any idea about it. But that's also why we have an advantage, because we do know about it, but we also know the asset side and the risk management side.
Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Dylan Callier. I'm a physical therapist, and welcome to the New Medical Nomads podcast, where I get to document my journey as a medical traveler, as well as interview other experts within the traveling field. Now, the rules for the traveling game are constantly changing, so anything you hear on this show should be for entertainment purposes only. This is not legal, financial, or medical advice. Enjoy the show and safe travels. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the New Medical Nomads podcast. Today I am with Joseph Reinke of FitBux, and we are going to talk about finances and student loans and repayment and debt and all that fun stuff that everybody's concerned about coming out of school. But Joe, can you kind of tell us a little bit about yourself? I know you're not necessarily a traveler, but you do a lot of traveling.
Yeah. First off, thanks for having me. I have been doing a lot of traveling, a lot of coast to coast traveling, going to different programs throughout the country, doing student loan workshops and all that fun stuff. So I'm all over the place. My background is I'm not in the healthcare field. I'm in the finance field. My wife is the physical therapist, so that's the connection to the healthcare industry. I've been in finance now for 12 or 13 years professionally. I've been doing stuff since I was probably, 12 or 13 years old in terms of like investment stuff. And everybody in my family is entrepreneurs, so starting up businesses and all that fun stuff. But we started FitBux on the algorithm side and the tech side. We started about 2.5 years ago, and we really launched the technology at the beginning of this year. And everything's been doing this and going up pretty fast. So excited and glad to be here. Again, that's a little bit about background. So.
All right. Very, very cool. And what is your official title for the finances?
I am the founder and CEO of the company of FitBux. Mm-hmm. Before I was here, I was in everything from wealth management to investment banking, M&A, all that fun finance stuff. Right. So that was a previous life.
And you're a licensed professional, so you're the person to kind of come to and talk to about all this stuff.
Yeah, so I'm a CFA charter holder. Just to give you guys some figures on that, there's about 100,000 of us worldwide. I guess you could consider it basically like a postdoctorate in finance. In wealth management, for example, there's only about 5,000 people worldwide that have it. So myself and one of my co-founders, he's also a charter holder as well. So that's our background. We actually just launched, I'll probably touch on this a little bit later on, what's called an RIA, which is a registered investment advisor. So we just got approved for the states to start managing some money on that side. So again, I'll talk a little bit about that probably a little bit later on. But it's exciting.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know FitBux is a pretty big buzz in the PT world. And obviously for the listeners listening in, we're going to be covering some topics here, but for sure, if there's any like personal questions that you have, I know Joe would be very open to any of those questions, and you can get onto FitBux and sign up for a profile and things like that. But, we'll kind of just get started. You are really focused on student loans and student debt and repayment. What got you interested in that?
So the whole premise behind FitBux is basically to make finances easy to understand, so that way you can spend less time on money and actually do, what you want to do. Why did you go to school? You didn't go to school to think about student loans. You went to school to be like a PT or a nurse or whatever it is, right? So that was the whole premise. And when I took a step back and started looking at the different industries, my natural inclination was to go towards what I knew, meaning like MBA students, your investment banking guys, and all that type of stuff. And when you look at our tools and you start saying, okay, well, how do you use some of this stuff? Who is it more beneficial to? It's not that specific audience. They could get a benefit from it. But, to me, it's not the major benefit. So we started looking at other industries. And I was at an event with my wife, and I started going through, what we're contemplating doing with a bunch of PTs that were there. And they're like, well, this would be perfect in the PT industry. And I was like, okay, well, let's take a deeper dive into that. And they were right, it was. And so we started off there, and we said, okay, well, let's look at other healthcare professions such as OTs and nurses and all these, PAs and all these different things. It's like, well, they actually are kind of in the same boat when it comes to salaries and student loans. And we've decided to focus the technology on student loans and other specific choices you have to make right when you come out of school. And so between that choice of student loans and coming right out of school, what other things you have to consider, and looking at healthcare industry, it's like it's basically a perfect match. So that's what got us going down that PT route, and now we're expanding out in other industries. So
awesome. I was going to say, so you're not just helping physical therapists; you can help basically any listener listening to the show.
Yeah, we can help anybody on the student loan piece. It's some of the technologies. It takes some pretty robust databases. So we have the databases for PTs. We have them for a handful of other healthcare professions as well. But even if the technology is not working, you just want help on your student loan, we'll be more than happy to walk through with you and still customize it to your situation. It's just going to be more verbal than visual, because some of the technologies might not work on your specific situation. But yeah, we can help anybody.
Awesome. Very, very cool. Well, do you mind, we'll kind of just dive into, can you give us an overview of like repayment strategies, or like a big question somebody should be asking themselves coming out of school, and then just kind of cover maybe like the repay and the pay and 10-year plan for student repayments?
Yeah. So the biggest question that you have to ask yourself coming out of school is, do you want to pay off your loans, or do you want to go for loan forgiveness? With your federal loans, for example, right now, if you've already graduated, you have 10 different repayment options. Okay. About 5 of those are for loan forgiveness. 5 of them are for pay down strategies. So you really have to take a step back and say, which one do I really want to go on? And that's where some of our technologies, as referencing earlier, that's where they come in, is help showing you those different strategies based on your personal situation. And then once you decide, okay, I'm going to pay it down, or I'm going to go on a loan forgiveness plan, how do you maximize that? So for example, you brought up like the 10-year strategy, the 10-year loan plan. That's the standard plan. Okay. So it has a 10-year payment. If you just roll into your repayment plan, that's what it is. So then we look at things like, okay, as a traveling PT or a travel healthcare professional, you might be in between contracts. You don't know what your deposit, is for your house, the next contract, all that type of stuff. There's a lot of budget ups and downs, if you will, when you're a travel PT. So we can show you other repayment options that reduce what your required payment is, and at the same time give you that budget flexibility. Okay. And so that might be something like what we call the extended prepay strategy. And then on top of that, we might turn around and say, well, what about refinancing? Okay, can you complement your strategy with refinancing? Now, a lot of travelers might have said, well, I tried to refinance and I can't qualify. That's right, because they only look at your salaried income. They don't look at the stipend money, the tax-free piece. However, now, for example, we have 2 lending partners that will look at that. So going back to that very first question, should I pay down my loan or go on loan forgiveness? That's just an example of if you decide to pay it down. Okay, 10-year, 25-year refinancing, and then we customize it to that specific area. But that's the first question. Should I pay it down or income-driven repayment plan? So then you ask about like PAYE and repay, and I'll touch on those and the differences on those. But did you want me to dive any deeper into any of that stuff on the pay down route, or have any questions on that at all?
No, I think that's good. I think that's a good overview. Yeah, just coming out of school and deciding, if you have that emotional investment of, I just need to pay off this debt because it keeps me up at night, versus, I want to pay off the minimal payments I can and then make the extra towards my house payment or my investments or anything like that.
Yeah, and that's that loan forgiveness side. So on the loan forgiveness piece, like you brought up PAYE and repays. And so for those of you that don't know, those are just 2 different types of plans underneath loan forgiveness. And so, for example, PAYE is 20 years, repay is 25 years. For those of you that don't know how an income-driven repayment plan works, your payments are really, really, really small, especially as a traveler, because it's only based on that salaried amount. So your payments might only be like $100 a month. And then what happens though is your income is or your interest, whatever you don't pay on your loans gets added onto your loan balance. So it keeps going. And then after 20 or 25 years, loans are forgiven. And then on that balance that you owe is forgiven, but you owe a tax on it. So that's how you have to start planning for the income-driven repayment plan. And the loan forgiveness is, what does that tax look like? What is the dollar amount? How do I start saving for that? So PAYE is 20 years and then forgiveness. Repay is 25 years and then forgiveness. Yep. And then the other key piece that's different on them is if you get married, repay is automatically based on dual incomes. If you get married and you're on PAYE, you have the choice, filing separate or filing joint on your taxes. And then that's how they base your payment. So from a high level, that's how those plans work. But ultimately, going back to the original question of what's the number one biggest question, it's, am I going to pay it down or am I going to go on loan forgiveness?
Awesome. Yeah, and I know that when we were talking about this earlier in the week, you had brought up that marriage component, which we were also talking, there's just not a lot of information out there about all this stuff. I know coming out of school, I had like maybe 3 or 5 videos and they're 15 minutes each, kind of just going through what the options were. And you asked me why I chose my strategy. I was like, oh, I don't know. I just kind of picked it and, wanted to do an income-based plan. But yeah, I think there's a lot of confusion out there for medical professionals. And it's not like we're stupid. We know what we're talking about. It's just a different jargon, different lingo, and hard concept to grasp.
Yeah, and that's why, like with us, a lot of people ask what you're doing. It's like, look, we give you the information and saying you are smart. Like, here's what you need to know to make that decision, right? And I got in an argument the other day with someone because they were trying to tell me how, like, doctors and healthcare professionals, they're just so financially undisciplined. They don't have any discipline, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no, they do have discipline. They're some of like the highest GPA students in the country. Like, they study, they've shown that discipline. They just don't know how to take that discipline and A, apply it to money, but B, you guys don't get educated in finance. You get educated in healthcare. So even if you're looking at it and you want to apply discipline, like, what are you even looking at? Mm-hmm. So trying to get that information in your hands of saying, look, here's the differences between the two. This is the choice you have to make. And then this is how you take advantage of them. And this is where you place that discipline at. And how do you follow that plan?
Absolutely. So we've kind of talked about student debt repayment on the health professional side. Is there anything special about travelers themselves making this decision and trying to pay off their student debt?
Yeah, there's a couple of them. So like we touched on the refinancing piece, like if you're trying to refinance, there's some really special considerations. You have to go to very specific lenders because most of them won't look at the stipend money. Okay, so that's one of the big ones. Another special consideration is that stipend money. And I'll give you a scenario that we oftentimes see. We'll talk to travelers and you're used to having this tax-free stipend, and then they go back to being a salaried, say a salaried PT. Well, if you go to like a $70,000 salaried PT position, you're going to have about $20,000 to $25,000 less in after-tax cash flow versus being a travel PT. So the issue that we see a lot of times is that they don't plan for that. And then they start working full time, and all of a sudden, like with their student loan payments, they can't afford them because that after-tax money that they get is so much lower. So one of the things that we work with a lot, especially with new grads, is saying, okay, how long am I going to travel? Let it be, say, 2 years, where my balance of what I owe is here. To make it sustainable when I want to actually go into a salary position, say my salary is here, where do I need to get this debt level at? How much do I need to start paying off on my loans? So if I get it down to here and I start working full time and my salary is here, then I'm not going to be living paycheck to paycheck. I can still afford to pay off my loans. I can still start saving for retirement. I can still do these other things, but you have to have that goal in mind of what that looks like, especially if you're going to pay off your loans.
Very good. And then was there anything in particular specific for like physical therapists or maybe other professions that are specific to them?
So, a lot of traveling, again, like the OTs and nurses, it's a similar type of boat because it's the stipend money. And it really goes back to that number one thing, paying down or an income during repayment plan. And then what are you doing, to really hone in on that, which way you're going to go. For PT, OT, some of those things, the other things you need to start looking at is, are you going to do things like residencies after you're done traveling? Are you going to do fellowships? Are you going to start your own private practice? The reason why those are really important specifically to those industries is because you have to look to say, if I do these things, is my income going to drop even further? Like salaried PT, I might be making 70,000, but what happens if I do a residency and that income is going to be 40,000? Yeah. So those are the things you really have to think about towards the future as well, as being specifically a PT. That's really what you have to start looking at, is that career side of it as well.
Got it. And so say there's a listener out there and they've kind of did the same thing I did, just chose whatever sounded good in that small little video. Are they able to switch what payment plan they're currently in?
Yeah, so you can switch depending on which loan you're in. Is different process to process, but you can switch anytime you want to if you're in your federal loans. So you can switch actually once every month. So like if I switch and then I want to switch again, I got to wait a month to do it.
Got it.
But if you're in like a 10-year repayment plan, for example, and you want to switch it to a 25-year, very simple. It's about probably 5 to 10 business days, and they'll get it done for you. Mm-hmm. Now, the opposite way, like if you're going for loan forgiveness and you're in like PAYE or Repay or IBR or one of those plans, and you want to switch to a pay down plan, like a 10-year standard payment or like the 20-year standard payment, then it's a little bit of a process. It takes about a month or two to go through. They have to first put you in one plan, have you sit there for a month, and then switch you to another plan. So it's a little bit longer, but you can switch it anytime you want to.
Got it. And going back to that scenario you kind of gave where there's a traveler or a permanent position person who's making like 70,000, and then they drop to a residency or start their own clinic and now they're making 40,000. Would that be beneficial for them if they were on an income-based plan trying to go for loan forgiveness?
If you're trying to go for loan forgiveness already, then yeah, you could drop your income as much as you want to. Actually, you want to drop your income because the lower your income, the lower the monthly payment, which means you should be able to save more. When we talk to a lot of healthcare professionals that want to start their own private practice or whatever it may be, oftentimes what we tell them, especially if you're on an income during repayment plan, like you got your loans to be a PT, a physical therapist, okay? That entails going to work basically a 9-to-5 job, 40 hours a week as a salaried PT. That's the ultimate way that they look at a lot of that stuff in terms of pricing and all that fun stuff with tuition. When you go to start your own private practice, you're no longer a PT, you're a business owner. Okay, there's a lot of other stuff you gotta think about. And so if you're on an income during repayment plan and your payment drops, that's fine. But because you're not making those payments, your balance is going up and up and up. Mm. So essentially what we tell people is to stop looking at it like a student loan and now start looking at it like a business loan, because you're basically not paying your loans because you're taking that money and using it to fund your business. And so now you basically have a business loan. And two things are going to happen. Either A, your business is going to do this and really take off, which means your monthly payments will take off because your income goes up, or B, your business is not going to do anything. And then you have to make the decision, do I pay this down now or do I keep going for loan forgiveness? And if that's the case, it may cost you a little bit more, but that's the risk. If you are going to go into business, that's the risk you take as an entrepreneur. You just have to change that mindset of this is a student loan to this is a business loan.
Got it. Okay. Very cool. And I know we were talking on the phone a little bit before this, and you sound pretty nerdy about finances, which is the exact people I want on my dream team for like finances and stuff. I just want somebody as, into their job as I am for like physical therapy and traveling and things like that.
Well, one of the cool things I'm excited about for travel PTs, and we haven't made this, or travel in general, and we haven't made this public yet because we just got the approval and we're going to start testing it and bringing on people, is a lot of traveling companies, they don't have things like 401ks. And even if they do, people still don't know what to do with them. Okay. So we just got the approval because we kept getting questions like, how much should I save? Where should I save it? All this type of stuff. So we just got the approval to actually start managing money for people. So now if you are offered a 401k, we can show you where to put that money as an investment. But like if you're a traveler and your company doesn't offer that, what options do you have, like IRAs and Roth IRAs? And now we can actually help you open them and actually help you pick the investments in them. So earlier you asked like what's unique about a traveler. That's one of those things is on the retirement side, you might not be offered like a traditional retirement plan. So these are the things that are available to you. And now that we can help with that too, I'm really excited about it. My background is more in investing. So I'm really excited about it. It's like I'm going home, right? Like back to the investment world. So
yeah, that is something that I had hit on with Jared Kazaza, who was on the show earlier. And it's when you choose as a traveler to work with multiple companies just to make your net wider and get those jobs that you want, it is harder to knuckle down on a 401k because you're usually bouncing between companies. And talking about those other opportunities like the Roth IRAs and other investment things out there that you can do instead. Definitely would be nice to have some guidance on that.
Yeah, my big one is I've seen, and this isn't with very many, but I've seen, like, and here's an example. I've seen a few traveling PTs that are actually 1040, which means that they're an independent contractor. And we see this more in like home health care type of stuff where they're independent. But if that's the case, for example, there's stuff out there that you can shelter like $25,000 a year on or $50,000 a year on that can really benefit you. But just having that stuff to go to and say, okay, where can I put money? That's the ultimate question. And then from there, how do you invest it?
Got it. Can you cover a little bit on that? That's something I haven't covered on the show yet, is a 1040 versus a W-2 tax.
So W-2 employee, you're basically getting a salary from a company. So you're considered an actual employee. So because of that, you have different retirement options available to you, different things you can write off differently. When you are a 1040 employee, basically you're a quote unquote contractor. So you are considered self-employed in the eyes of the government, which means you have a whole different list of things that you can do that most people can't. So things like what's called a SEP IRA, which is basically self-employed plan. It's an individual retirement account, but for self-employed people. Yeah. And show you how that differs. Your traditional IRA, you can only put in $5,500 a year on. SEP IRAs, you can actually put up, I think it's something like $50,000 or $55,000 a year on. Okay. So major difference. Other things like write-offs. So like since you're self-employed, if you have a car, for example, and you say this is from my self-employed business, you can now write off your car payments as a business expense. So you can do that with all pre-tax money. So being 1040 is basically independent contractor or quote unquote self-employed, and you just get some write-off benefits and some retirement options that aren't available to you otherwise.
Got it. And from what I understand, if you are working with a recruitment, for the listeners who are curious, if you're working for a recruitment agency, I believe you're almost always a W-2 employee.
Most of the time, yeah.
Whereas if you were going out yourself on the lead generation sites or anything like that, finding those jobs, just you, no middleman, then you would be a 1040.
Yeah, and that's why we see a handful of 1040 travelers because they've gone out and done that. The easier route, like you said, is go to an agency or a company and have them place you. So then you would be a W-2 employee at that point.
Got it. Joe, if the listeners were looking for more information on finances or student debt or anything like that, where would you direct them towards, whether it be your own website or whether you have a podcast that you listen to or books or anything like that?
Yeah, so FitBux.com is our website. You go on, build your profile. It takes about 4 or 5 minutes using estimates. You send us your loan details. We'll upload them for you. We schedule a call and go through everything with you one-on-one and customize it. Everybody always asks us, what's the cost for that? We don't charge for that. It's all free. We help you develop that solution for free. And then on the implementation side, depending on which route you go, that's how we make our money is on the implementation
Sure.
side. In terms of other places to go, that's always one of the toughest questions I get. Financial podcasts, I don't really listen to.
Okay.
I listen to like way other podcasts, like physics and like astronomical, like physics and all that type of stuff.
Star Talk Radio, or which ones do you listen to?
Yeah, I just whatever I like put in YouTube and search and what comes up, and I listen to some really random stuff. My wife makes fun of me a lot. So the other day I ordered thermodynamics physics book, and she's like, what are you doing this for? I'm like, I don't know. I just need something different to read. So
I ended up buying this one. It's Neil deGrasse Tyson's Astrophysics for People in a Hurry.
There you go.
Oh,
it's a good one. I might have to go buy that one.
Yeah, still on my shelf. I haven't read it yet. I'll let you know when I'm done.
Beautiful. Yeah, you're just like storing the collection, right?
Yeah, trying to if I don't ruin it all.
In terms of books, that's another tough one. And I've actually been asked to give a podcast specifically on books, not just necessarily which books to read, but how to read them. Yep. That's the biggest problem, because in finance, let it be blogs or books or whatever, there's stuff everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that guys that write all these things, they got biases left and right. And there's nothing good or bad, but when you read these books or you listen to these podcasts, you have to understand those biases and say, okay, well, I understand what he's talking about. And most of the time it's all cookie cutter stuff. It's like, okay, well, how do I take that and then apply it to me? And then what's the alternative? And how does that apply to me? And do I mix and match the strategies? Do I go with this one? How do I use it? And that's what I see the problem a lot with different books stuff, is that people will come out and be like, I read this book and this is the only way to do it because he has no other opinion. It's like, oh, okay. And, I've seen stuff, where a real famous guy writes some stuff about debt repayment. And it's great because it will save you money. But if you actually dug deeper into this other stuff, you save another 10 to 20 grand on your student loans. And it's like, oh, well, I didn't know that. It's like, well, because you read one book and you didn't want anybody else's opinion. Right. So when you read a book, it's not looking for answers. It's looking for what's out there and how does that apply to me. So there are other good books out there. I know a lot of people will read like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Like that's just more of a mental mindset of what you need when it comes to money. And that's basically where a lot of people start, is that book. And then as you want to decide which route I want to go, you can go from like investment strategy books all the way to planning books or whatever it may be. But that's a good place to start really getting the mindset and going different places.
That's actually the first book I read about finances when I came out of school.
Yeah.
So I knew I had this problem. I knew I had this money that I'm eventually going to have to pay off, but I didn't know anything. So I was kind of recommended that book and went into it. And exactly like you said, Rich Dad, Poor Dad's more of a mindset book. Yep. Where it kind of teaches you the difference between assets and liabilities and how to think about those and what to do with those. It was a pretty quick read as well. I'll definitely put those in the show notes. I definitely recommend anybody who's just wanting to kind of start into it, that would be a good starting place.
Yeah, and that's a good place to go. And because of those biases and not really giving like an overarching thing, I've had a lot of people ask, like a lot of universities have started asking us, will we design courses? And, I've been thinking about it, just like taking some of that stuff, like you said about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, what's an asset, what's a liability, and basically designing stuff around there to be like, this is how you have to think about each one of these. So when you read a book, where does this plug into? How do you actually look at that and see, where does this affect me? So that's, kind of what we're thinking about doing in terms of coursework, is that framework. And then that would be like level 1, level 2, and 3 would dive deeper into investments and debt and all that stuff. But we'll see. It's a matter of time, right? If we can get those out, then we will. But we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, you're a very busy guy. You were showing me your sticky notes before we started, and just micro writing and full of cross-offs and rewrites and things like that. Kind of looks like
it's a combination of FitBux and having an 8-month at home, 8-month-year-old at home.
Yeah,
between the two, it's like it's intense. So
And we connected on Facebook, and I noticed a post right before we started that you had made about like some parents saying that they were working like 40 hours a week and they're too tired from their job to, play with their kids. So they just hand them the iPad and let them go. And you kind of said something in there about, it's not a time thing, it's a priority thing when you're coming out if you don't have, the quote unquote energy to deal with your kid or something like that. So I definitely admire you for, keeping up with your kid. And then you also got all this other craziness going on and your wife and other life and things like that.
Well, I joke around and, a lot of people are like, oh, I work 40 hours a week, so I'm too tired to play with my kid. And it's like, I work on FitBux anywhere between 100 and 120 hours a week. And I still go home and play with my daughter for 2 or 3 hours. And I tell people that, they're like, well, you must not have a life. It's like, no, I have a great life. It's FitBux and my daughter. Like, what else is there? Like, I'll give you an example, and this is probably going to be like sacrilegious to some people. I'm a huge Star Wars freak. I went and saw Star Wars last night, and I thought it was the worst Star Wars I've ever seen. Yep. And I walked out of there. I'm like, man, I just wasted 3 hours. I don't even want to see the last one. Like, that's how bad I thought it was. And I'm like, I just wasted 3 hours. And I said to my wife, she's like, I know, we could have been playing with our daughter instead. I'm like, I know. Like, so I don't look at it as like not having a life. It's like I'm working on like FitBux and my daughter. Like, that is awesome for me. So yeah, I joke around with people about that. Yo, you work 40 hours a week. Like, awesome. Like, go play with your daughter then. Yeah. So
I also watched Star Wars last night, and I can say I kind of agree with you on that one. But
not a fan.
Yeah, no, your time becomes very very valuable to you, and that's when I get most frustrated. Recently, I've been dealing with like some car issues, and I have to keep going back to the car shop where it could have been easily solved on that first visit, and that's when I get just so frustrated. And then same thing with like doing paperwork and stuff for these for the companies I'll be working for and recruitment agencies, and just sometimes they're a little unorganized and they ask for something and you get it back, and then they ask for something else, and now you got to drive all the way back home and get it, versus it just being flat out, so you can just take care of it all in one swoop and then be done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like, funny that you brought that up, because I did a podcast about a year ago on budgeting, and that it's not about the X's and O's and the dollars and cents of budgeting. It's about the mindset and how that mindset plays a role in everything we're doing in life. And a lot of it revolves around time and time value. And I'm actually doing a live chat tonight in our finance FitBux group on Facebook that's about budgeting, and it's around that concept as well. And I've had a lot of people ask me to actually turn it into a book. So again, add that to the list of things that I'm supposed to be doing. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's about the time aspect and what am I doing with the time? Yep.
Absolutely. Have you heard of ghostwriters?
I have not.
Like writers, not writer, like the Marvel comic, but it's kind of like for people who put out a bunch of content, who speak a lot, they basically have people just document everything they say, and then they take the snippets out and turn what you say into the book and almost repurpose it like that. I'm wondering if that would be a better option for you.
About 2 years ago, myself and my wife were driving to up near Yosemite. It's a little town called Twain Harte. It's on the backside of Yosemite. And she literally drives 2.5 hours, and she put her phone on record and said, just start talking about finance. And literally she went through and took out the snippets and basically put out topics to do that, either do books or blog articles or whatever it was. We just ran out of time and never did it. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, those are the things, and it's hard from like our perspective as finance people to sit there and say like people would actually even be interested in that, because it's just one big thing. I'll give you an example, like a prepayment on a loan. How does a prepayment work? I wouldn't even think twice about that. And we got the question so much that the other day I put out a 90-second prepayment video on what it means on a student loan. And within like, I think 3 hours, we had over 3,000 views on it. And so it's like, yeah, we'll be putting out more things like that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Turning those little snippets into books. We'll see what happens.
Speaking of prepayment, I'm not sure if I quite understand that fully. Do you want to go into that for a little bit?
Yeah, no problem. So when you have a payment, now we talked about earlier on a pay down strategy versus a loan forgiveness strategy. A prepayment is on a pay down strategy. Okay. When you're in a pay down in any type of loan, so like a mortgage, an auto loan, a student loan, and you're paying it down, you might come in, you'll get a lender that says, hey, if you make $1,000 payment every single month for the next 120 months, which is 10 years, then your loans are paid off. Okay, so that $1,000, let's just say it's student loans and you have 10 different student loans, that $1,000 minimum payment gets dispersed across all your loans, okay, one by one. When you make a prepayment, it's basically anything above that $1,000. So you can make a discretionary payment. Let's say it's $250 a month. So you pay over the required amount, and then that $250 is used to pay off your loans faster. So the faster you pay them off, the sooner you have them paid off, and the less interest you have to pay over time. So it saves you money.
Okay.
So that's the basic definition of a prepayment. Now it's discretionary. Some people do it monthly. Some people do it when they get a bonus or a tax return. Some people do it all the above. It just depends on how you want to apply it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. Very, very cool. What are some, I guess, common questions that you get from other common questions that we just covered, like between either travelers or health professionals themselves?
It's more on the personal side. So like I'm trying to family plan or I'm a resident, what's available to me, things like that, that are really customized to each individual.
Wow.
So you really have to look at like the career side, what you're trying to do. That's why with like the PTs, it's very specific. Like, am I doing residencies or anything like that? And the personal side is just pretty much blanket across the board. Like, am I getting married? Am I having children? Would I rather buy a house? Would I rather save assets and invest money instead of paying off my debt? So those are more on the personal side and where the customization of the solution comes into place.
Got it. Well, I was very impressed when I went on to FitBux and was kind of plugging in my information. And I think it's a very good option for those out there who are looking for a place to start and might not want like maybe a financial advisor or kind of on the fence about a financial advisor, because you really just kind of walk them through all the different scenarios and what might be best for them, just to make that first initial decision on what the hell am I going to do with all this debt.
Yep. But that's the funny thing is we actually have probably about 10 to 20 financial advisors and planners that now send their clients to us because they know nothing about student loans. And it's like, you guys are financial planners and you don't know about debt. And they don't. I mean, I've been on that side of the field. Like if you go and research the CFP, for example, which is for certified financial planners, if you look at their coursework, it's all asset management from a high level and risk management of like things like life insurance. There's nothing on there about debt, nothing. And so it's like, well, I'm trying to set up a plan. I have debt. I mean, I'm a student that just graduated. I don't have assets. And unless I have like mortgages and a family, I probably don't need life insurance yet. Like let's talk about my debt. So that's where we really plug in, and that's where we come in, is that debt side. And like I said, we're going to start. We've had so many people ask us about the asset management side and the financial planning side that we aren't going to advertise those services. But when you come on, if you want us to help you with that asset management side or the 401k investments or the IRAs, we have the ability to do that now. Like I said, though, we're not going to advertise it yet. It's just if we're talking to you and going through your student loan strategy, you want to have us help you set that other stuff up, we'll be able to do that now too. So
very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I feel like with physical therapy, there's so many. You come out as a generalist, and then you kind of specialize into your niche, whether you want to be outpatient or neurology or even oncology or pediatrics, wound management. There's a lot of different avenues that you can go down. Like I couldn't tell you anything about wound management, but I'm a PT and I should. Well, I can tell you a little bit, but definitely not comfortable being in a room and like having to do all the dressings and stuff. The main ones. But I imagine the same is the same in the financial world, where student debt is so niche. compared to like other financial investments.
Yeah, and that's why we're in a unique spot. It is a niche, and knowing the student loan payment and the debt strategies, most wealth managers and financial advisors and stuff don't have any idea about it. But that's also why we have an advantage, because we do know about it, but we also know the asset side and the risk management side, because we've been in that world and we're experts in that too. So that's the whole point of FitBux. Is that's what I saw when I started thinking about what is FitBux, was nobody was really looking at that complete picture. So assets or life insurance or just debt, no one was literally looking at it and piecing it together for you as a consumer. And so at the heart, like you'll notice if you're building your profile, you see your score, and that's how we customize everything for each person, is through that score, because it's customized to you. And that's what I was talking about earlier, why we need such intensive databases, is because of all the analysis that's going through that score. But it allows us to sit there and say, look, if you do this strategy, this is how it affects your overall profile. If you start adding in things like retirement or mortgages or kids, this is how you can start using it for planning. And we're able to mix and match all those pieces so it all makes sense. So that's what we're looking at, is saying, look, we're the student loan expert, but we're also experts over here. So let's look at the two combined.
Got it. Well, getting close to wrapping up here, if you were talking to like a new grad coming out of school in a similar situation that I was coming out, where I really didn't know anything about finances, just looking for a place to start, what advice would you give them just to get started?
Plan. Just start developing a plan. I mean, that's the biggest thing. While like we get, besides new grads coming right out of school, we get a lot of people that have been out for 1 year to 3 years, and they come back and they're just like, I had no idea what I was doing. And then all of a sudden I'm looking at my balance and it grew. What happened? It's like, well, you're on a loan forgiveness plan. They're like, I thought I was paying off my loans. It's like, no, you weren't. Or like I brought up earlier about travel PTs, that they get this huge after stipend tax, like after tax money, and they never plan on what to do with that money. And they go out and they spend it and they do whatever they do with it. And then they go to work full time as a salaried employee, and then they can't afford to live because now they got this huge payment. They have way less. So just having that plan is a first part, and having a high understanding of that plan, even if it's the simplest plan in the world, just having a simple plan will help put you in that right spot. And then if you want to make it more complicated, you can. And I mean, I can get as complicated as you want me to. That's where I really have fun. But first plan, keep it simple at a minimum, and then go from there.
Okay. Very, very good. If the listeners have questions to reach out to you, Joe, where would you like them to go?
You go to fitbux.com, down in the footer. If you just have a simple question, it's just to contact us. You can shoot us an email. If you want help on your student loans, just go through, build your profile, schedule a time to talk with us. Like I said, it's all free. I'm on Facebook all the time. We have a Facebook account too, it's FitBux Official. I mean, you can direct message me on Facebook too. I'm on and off there pretty much all day. I hate my phone now because it just constantly goes off, but you can contact me through that too, and FitBux as well. So either way, the easiest way is through fitbux.com. And then if it's a specific question, you can just use contact us to shoot us an email and go from there.
Awesome. And I know you're a part of the New Medical Nomads Facebook group as well. So if the listeners are looking to reach you through there, they can as well. Just tag in a question. But if you're listening and you're looking for the next episode, I usually launch these on the No Medical Nomads podcast Facebook page. That's where I officially launch everything. If you're looking for earlier episodes, you can find those on YouTube, the YouTube channel, or iTunes or Stitcher. And that way you'll have early access and be able to get all of your questions answered for traveling and finances and student debts and other things. Nerdy topics about Star Wars as well.
Awesome. I can go on all day about that too.
Well, thank you so much, Joe. Really appreciate you coming on and talking finances with us. And I definitely highly recommend FitBux. I know it's been a good tool for me. And like you said, you kind of walk everybody through it. I think it took us like 30 minutes, 45 minutes just to walk through that and have a solid plan coming out of it. So definitely recommend that. And all the links and everything that we talk about are going to be in the show notes as well. But thanks so much, Joe. I know you're busy. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. And you have safe travels when you're making all your school trips and all that down there in Southern California.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.